What is going on, Sales Dev Squad? Thank you guys for tuning in to another episode of the Sales Dev Squad podcast. We have a super awesome guest for you guys today. One of my good friends from Denver, Colorado, Mr. Dylan McCormick, who is also a senior SDR for a startup called Flatfile. You can also check out Dylan on the snake oil game. We actually played together with a few other SDRs, and he actually won. So definitely, definitely a quality salesman here. But super excited to have him on to share just a little bit more about his expertise in sales development, as well as just his thoughts on the growing tech scene in Denver, Colorado. But Dylan, thanks so much for joining us today, man. How are you?
I'm doing great. Happy to be here and just to talk with you. Know we've had a few different discussions on this, so happy to be on here and to work through it.
Absolutely, dude. Well, dude, just give us a quick run through of like who you are and like how you kind of got started in tech sales. I know we talked a little bit before we started recording here, but like how did you kind of fall into sales, man?
Yeah, so I had a funny type of route in how I ended up in the sales side. So I got into college thinking I wanted to become a lawyer because I came from a small town. It's like you either become a lawyer, a doctor, or something in real estate in Florida. And I decided I wanted to look into something a little bit different. I chatted a few people in law school and found that it was not the route that I wanted to look into. I ended up getting an internship in oil and gas in Texas that was for the global sales division of a company called Chicago Bridge and Iron. So I was a part of really the contract development team there. And it was a lot less forward focusing, actually like customer facing, and more of just putting together high level proposals for projects that were engineering based for companies like ExxonMobil, Shell, those types of companies.
Sick,
And
big
so
companies.
yeah, so the type of like contracts I was working on was anywhere from about $30 million projects to the largest one, which I was part of the project team for, was about 8.8 billion. So I got to see very, very large sales interchanges, seeing like the back end work that a lot of times people don't know what an RFP or is, or those types of the terminology. That's what I lived in starting off. But then I was like, I don't want to do oil and gas. I want to do something a little bit faster paced because it took these deals as at the minimum about 3 to 4 years for the larger ones to close. So ended up in technology, working in staffing actually. So I did IT staffing in Tampa. And when I did that, I kind of fell in love with the tech world. Learned a lot. Actually started a test automation user group that amassed a little over 150 members by the time I left. And by that point, I was like, I want to do more of the software sales, less of the recruiting and staffing portion. So I had some friends over at Oracle NetSuite that referred me in. And that's where I got my start here in Denver. And so I did that for a year and a half. And then after doing it for a while, I wanted to get more experience with larger scale companies. And so that's what led me to move from Oracle NetSuite over to Onera, which is a small software startup out of San Francisco. I was the first BDR hired on there. And in that amount of time, I really built out there. But
Oh no, you just said sick.
yeah. And so I was the first BDR hired there and helped build out their full outbound strategy. So implemented a few sales tools, did that work, was supposed to move out during COVID in July. I was supposed to be in San
Ah,
Francisco,
shit.
but unfortunately was laid off with the whole sales team in April. From that point, I was referred by our CTO to my current company, Flatfile, which is based here in Denver, but it's a fully remote company as the first SDR, BDR as well. So now doing a little bit of a hybrid role. We're a very small company, but growing quickly if anyone's looking into positions. And so doing a little bit of hybrid, doing mostly business development, sales development, but closing on a lot of the SMB and some of the mid-market deals as well.
Dude, that's awesome, man. It's really refreshing to see someone who like wasn't in the SDR role for like less than a year and then that was about it. Like I feel like you've really sort of been able to develop your like SDR, BDR skills, man. Can you just like walk us through like how you feel like being staying in the SDR role for like 2+ years has like changed your perspective on sales at all, or just like what are your thoughts on the SDR and BDR role now that you've been doing it for quite some time?
I think it's a really underrated position, even though there's a lot of people that are bringing light to this. And there's been a bigger push in the last year, especially a lot of programs that are upping it and more of a focus on helping develop these types of skills. But there's a lot to it that people don't realize, because I feel that most people that are in the BDR, SDR space will do it in a pretty established program. So they'll work with like an IBM, a NetSuite, a Marketo, like Adobe, that, or Salesforce, great example, where they have all these tools and all these systems already built for themselves. But where the real value is going into companies where they don't have anything set at all and being able to establish those types of processes. So that's what I did with Onera, was really establish how we're going to go after these companies, how we're going to get an inbound funnel. And those are things most people take for granted, but those are vital for companies later on, regardless of even having SDRs or not. The business development process is being able to really gain as much interest from outside like prospects that you normally would not have at the highest rate possible. So either that's through like marketing channels, or you have an outbound SDR is making those calls. Though it's so important for people to understand like why it's vital, and not just get caught up in kind of the general consensus of I just got to make 60 dials today because it's needed, but really understanding like why those 60 dials are necessary and how you can get the most out of it. Because you can make 60 dials, and you and me both have done it, made 60 dials a day that didn't mean much, or you made 10 dials in a day, but each of those dials has been really valuable because you did the background research, you understood the value proposition of why that company could actually utilize your service. So there's a lot I could say to it, and being in the role for now, coming up on 2 years and a little bit longer if you count my times in recruiting, it really just comes to continually learning as much as you can, not just about like sales and process, but understanding your specific market, understanding your customers even more, and really understanding like why someone would be a great fit. Like what does it mean for them to actually see some value in what you're putting out there, and then seeing like why or when you should not consider it a like need. Mm-hmm. So sometimes I do like calls now where I'm doing full cycle, and I'll just discredit in the call within 15 minutes if I can see that they either do not need the service or there's another viable option for them out there. So becoming better to utilize your time. Long answer, but
Nah, dude, it's all good. That's an interesting like perspective. I don't feel like a lot of people consider early stage startups. Like you said, people just consider already established programs and companies. Like, could you like paint a picture? Like, I feel like maybe a lot of people are scared. They feel like they're walking into something that's like could fail at any minute, and there's no like sort of consistency, or maybe just like, you know, just the support from like a large company. Like, should people be, you know, wary of like joining early stage startups, or do you feel like a majority of the learning sort of happens at these smaller companies?
I truly believe it depends on the person. And I've had this discussion with multiple people that have ended up moving away from some larger companies. So like my prior company with NetSuite, I have a few friends that wanted to go into the startup realm, and I had discussions that was really similar with them, the same exact type of question. And so there is an incurred risk. When you're starting with a smaller startup, you have to be aware of that. But the worst, you have to know what's the worst thing that can happen. So the worst thing that happened to me. I was laid off by a company 4 months in, and a lot of people thought it would be like a devastating thing. But if you accept that risk and know that you're going to get a lot of knowledge and you're actually going to be really valuable to some of those other types of companies that are looking for that type of person, then I think it's definitely worth that investment. I actually found out recently, I was referred by my CTO at Onera prior to Flatfile, two Flatfile's founders. But even before that, I actually went golfing with my boss about a month ago, and I found out that he had heard my name through the grapevine through another venture capital partner that had known about Onera's layoffs and said to look into me. So the startup community, while it can be a little bit scary, it's very close knit. And if you show capacity to be able to work in that type of role, then you can be extremely valuable, not only for startups, but if you can show that you worked well in a startup, other larger companies that are going to look into hiring for more senior positions are going to recognize that too.
Interesting. Dude, that leads me to my next question here. Like, obviously, like your network landed you the opportunity that you're in right now, and this happened during COVID-19. So it obviously is helpful to like get yourself out there and be known. Like, how can people start taking steps towards like learning or developing like networking skills, or just like, being able to have like a backup plan in case something were to happen? Like, how can people start like just planting seeds right now, so if anything were to happen in the future, opportunities could sort of pop up similar to your background?
I would look into people that you admire and finding a way to either set up conversations or even just be involved in the same room as them. So with Zoom and everything going on nowadays, there's a ton of people that are putting on different happy hour type of like sales talks and even like live webinar discussions where you can ask questions. And it comes down to the same type of approach that you should be when you're selling. So you're selling yourself most likely when you're looking into a new position, or when you're trying to gain mentorship. You're still selling yourself as someone to be viable for some type of relationship. And for you to be able to really take advantage of those the highest ability, it's getting into those types of rooms, asking questions, and then following up with these people. It's not asking, hey, can you mentor me? Or hey, can we have a conversation here? It's almost going like the breadcrumb trail type of route where you're getting involved. So I was involved with like Morgan Ingram and James Bawden they have the sales happy hour like every Friday. When I had gotten laid off, I still did that every single week. I still set up meetings from that with different people that I met in that group and in other groups, where it was less of me trying to sell myself and look, what can I get from them, but rather what can I learn from them. It's that genuine curiosity that I think people really appreciate when you're asking someone about their opinion with a really targeted answer. So following up with someone, like I did this with a sales leader recently that I'm interested in like really gaining his perspective. And so I reached out to him and made it like very valid, like, hey, I really appreciated your point in this webinar. Would love to gain your perspective on this if you have time. Really short to the point, but shows I was paying attention and I wasn't just asking for, hey, like career advice or could I get a job?
Mm-hmm. Dude, that's awesome, man. I'm so happy it paid off for you, and it really does come down to just like when those new startups are forming and they're building out teams, like it's all about like who they know, because like they're just gonna default to like who they know in their network when it pertains to hiring. So like nowadays, especially right now, like you're not really gonna find a job by just applying for it. Maybe you will, but I mean, obviously your experience says otherwise, man. But dude, walk us through like, I see here that you're also a tennis coach, man. How did you get into that?
Yeah. So I've been playing tennis since I was, I guess, 10 or 11 years old. So 15, 16 years coming up now. And I actually, when I was moving from Florida to Colorado, I'd already done a little bit of coaching in the past, but I had 7 months from my ending of my role at TEKsystems, which was the recruiting job, before moving with Oracle to Denver. And I was really kind of distraught on like what I wanted to do. I wanted to do some traveling, some other things. So I want to look into like a flexible job. I had been playing tennis for a long time, still play 1 to 2 to 3 times a week, and decided to reach out to a friend of mine who was a director of tennis and got the job there. And yeah, I became certified professionally in, I guess it was 2018 summer. And so now I teach in Denver, kind of a little ad hoc here and there with just friends
Sick.
and acquaintances and like contacts. So I do about 2 to 3 hours of work per week, just doing like tennis lessons, just helping people from beginner level to like intermediate.
Interesting, man. I know that like you recently started like a LinkedIn group called Sophomore Sales, where you just want to connect with like other SDRs and BDRs and sort of just kind of provide some training on that front, man. I guess like what are some like correlations between like you teaching people how to play tennis and like just sharing like sales tips. And basically, I feel like you'd be a really good manager one day, man, because you're really good at like just talking to people and helping them out, man. Like any correlations you can draw between the two?
I'd say huge, actually. In my opinion, with like tennis and coaching, it's the purest, and this goes down to anyone who's involved with also like personal training. It's the purest type of sale because you are selling yourself and your knowledge and what you can provide to a person above anything else. So you really have to put on not just a good face, a good personality, really show that you're engaged, but you also have to understand what are the specific goals of the person. Like, why are they there? And so that's something I try to start every one of my sales calls that I've ever done. Is like, hey, why are we having this conversation? Why do you think it was important that we would have this? So when I'm doing a tennis lesson, I say, hey, what do you want to achieve from this? Do you want to get better? Do you want to get in better shape? Are you trying to play in a competition level? And so the correlations are huge. And for me, like when in the sales side, I genuinely love like helping people get better, develop themselves, because I look back at myself when I was 21, 22, coming out of college, and I would have loved someone who had been accomplished, who'd been through the ringer, per se, had to like hold my hand and be like, hey, this is the mistakes I made. So I want to help you through the mistakes. I feel like in LinkedIn, there's a big portion of people that post all their successes. I really wish people would post their failures more often, because that's the thing that people are going to learn the most from.
Dude, I love that, man. No, I definitely resonate with you, man. I feel like we're both really passionate about just connecting and helping as many SDRs as possible, and so I really respect that as well, man. But dude, I know we kind of talked about this kind of off the record as well. Like, you're obviously loving living in Denver, Colorado. I know you've tried to convince me to move out there a few times already, but dude, like obviously the tech scene is growing all over the US and other pockets like LA, but more so in like Denver specifically from what you kind of shared, man. Like, dude, just walk us through like the Denver tech scene, man. Like any noticeable companies that you've seen like kind of move out there, from San Francisco, or just like sort of niche pop-ups, that are exclusive to Denver, and sort of where you kind of see the Denver tech scene moving forward.
Yeah. So I would definitely want to call out that there is, I would name, so I'll keep it short, to like three types of companies that we're seeing move out here more often than not. So we're starting to like Oracle, NetSuite, and Marketo are two of the largest like SDR employers here in Denver. So they have, each of them just in the Denver scene probably have, I would say, close to 60, 70, maybe close to 100 combined SDR like focus. But we're starting to see that used to be the backbone. But now we're starting to see just a huge influx of companies that, like you said, from the San Francisco area and other areas that are making Denver its home. The notable ones I would say would be like Datadog is making a really big push out here right now and starting to develop and like bring in a lot of people. They recently IPO back in July and have really starting to make their presence known here. Another one would be Snowflake. And anyone that's in the tech scene really should look into Snowflake and understand what they do, because they're expanding quickly. I have a few friends on the management side there as well as the sales side, and they love it. It's been blowing up. But then you have another like just very notable startups like Udemy that's here. Ibotta,
Gusto, Slack, right?
Gusto, Slack. I moved here. It's actually amazing because I've been here 2 years. Actually, this month, it'll be in 5 days. It'll be
Congrats,
2 years in Denver. And I mean, I've seen so many companies that have popped up, and me having the background that I have, I've had 3 or 4 companies that are reaching out for their first SDR position that have reached out to me. That are for in the Denver market. Another one, Freshworks, if anyone's familiar with them, along with Iterable. Those are 2 that had reached out to me for that reason. So it's really cool to see. And so seeing like the startup scene, which used to be like mostly like smaller, like very specific type startups, now you're getting startups from other areas that are coming here because they're recognizing the talent pool. And I mean, it's a great place.
dude.
I can't talk better about like the scene out here, but also just the area.
Yeah, I mean, like, what's the cost of living compared to like maybe like I mean, San Francisco is ridiculous, but we'll see how like post COVID sort of affects real estate there, man. But like, give us a rundown, like, what is like what's like an average apartment or house run in Denver?
Yeah, so for apartments here, it's pretty dependent on your area. Denver's not, it's not a huge city, but it's pretty big. If you're going in downtown area and say you want a one bedroom apartment, it's going to be between about $1,600 to $2,000 for like a really nice one bedroom. But for myself, like I'm renting a townhouse with a group of guys that it's a little outside of the city, but it's 1,300 for a three bedroom with 2,000
Wow.
square feet. But it's a 2,000 square feet and about 300 like square foot of a rooftop like area. So it's very affordable. I mean, if you're going outside the city, you can get under $1,000 per person. But if you're staying in the city, it's typically above 1,000 or so, depending on how many roommates you want, or if you're really bougie, trying to do like one of the new, very new like skyscraper apartments, and then you're pushing up. But typically, it's not too bad.
Dude, that's still like very reasonable considering like, you're still in a city and like you're still in tech and you could make, if you're an AE and working in tech, I mean, you could still make decent money, I'd imagine, right?
Yeah. I mean, average AEs here, if you're working for the right companies, definitely pushing over the six figures mark. Even some of like the SDR, BDR positions that are a little bit more intrusive, you're still pushing so around that mark where it's very affordable and you can still save a lot. That's what I like. The thing about Denver, though, I will say, is that a lot of people spend their money on the weekends here going to the mountains, especially ski season. The city is a lot less lively, but the mountains is where a majority of people spend their money and time.
Sick, dude. I mean, I'm excited to see like what happens with Denver and with you specifically, man. Maybe you'll be able to pioneer some big movements there for sure, dude. But dude, I just want to leave us with a question here. For anyone listening that was inspired by this episode or by anything that you said today that, wants to, consider tech sales, join that early stage tech company or even hell, just move to Denver because of the opportunities there, man. Like, what advice do you have for them?
Reach out. I'm always available on like LinkedIn, or I can share my email on in the notes or something like that if people want to get in contact or have any questions around Denver or tech scene. Or a lot of people I know that like want to make the move from staffing into the tech sales world. Please let me know. I'm passionate in that end. I also have helped a good amount of college students that don't really know what route they want to do, but they find tech interesting. I was a recruiter, so I know not only technology from the sales perspective, but know it from a pretty high level when it comes to understanding just specific positions and landscape. So love helping people, love being able to reach and help however I can.
Anyone or where can people find you?
Yeah, LinkedIn would probably be the number one platform. I'm just starting to use Twitter, but I don't really have it up and running at this point. But yeah, LinkedIn to contact me there, or Dylan at flatfile.io would be the easiest direct route. And that I look at that even more often than I do my LinkedIn. But yeah, those are probably the two best avenues.
Sweet, man. Well, dude, thanks so much for hopping on and sharing your wisdom and your thoughts and advice, man. Definitely appreciate it. Hopefully we can get another round of snake oil going with maybe some people that watch this podcast here. And Sales Dev Squad, hope you guys enjoyed this quick convo. Definitely connect with Dylan. He has a really awesome LinkedIn group page as well. And we will catch you guys on the next one.